I'm sitting here with Michael van Wyk, who is the partner at Deloitte and also the Western Cape retail lead. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Ashlea, thank you very much for having me here.
There have been a lot of changes in consumer behaviour. What are the issues around that?
Well, I think actually at a high level, I think the changes in the global economy and the changes in the demographics we're seeing in societies as a whole, coupled with, I suppose, the convergence of technologies and the increasing changes in technologies, are creating drastic changes, significant changes in consumer behaviour, which I think will create quite turbulent times in the next 10 years or the next decades or so. And I think it's imperative for businesses to shape the conversations that they have with their consumers so that they understand where their consumers are going, so that they go along with their consumers on this journey.
And what shifts are we seeing in the LSM groups in South Africa?
Well, I think, as everybody knows, there's a lot of talk about a growing middle class globally. I think where they talk about something about 70 to 80 million people being added to the middle class every year for the next 10 years. So that's about a billion people in the next decade, which is extremely exciting for the retailers and for the consumer products companies. But still, you need to understand where you're going with your strategy to make sure that you ultimately remain relevant for these consumers. From a South African perspective, over the last decade, we've definitely seen a similar move towards an increased middle class. And again, it's been imperative for the retailers and the broader consumer companies to understand what products should they be delivering to these companies, and again, ultimately, to remain relevant to their customers.
Now, a major impact on the South African consumer would be political and social changes.
It is, and again, not necessarily unique to South Africa, but very apparent here. And again, it's not new news that we're now seeing more two-income working families, more than we've ever seen before. And this has, not only a change on the family structure and the family dynamics, but also has a change on how people spend. So all of a sudden, there's more money for discretionary spending. But potentially, there's only one child rather than 2 or 3. So there's more money being spent on adult goods, for example. So often one takes these things for granted, but if you extrapolate these over a long period of time, one has to take cognizance of that people's money will be spent on different things to what they were being spent on in the past. And I think, again, these things need to drive the strategies for companies that want to be successful in the future.
Now, should we be concerned about the sustainability of the spending? Taking low credit extensions into consideration and employment levels?
Yeah. Well, the concept of sustainability, is very broad. We can speak about it. It was sustainable. How sustainable is the current retail spend in South Africa? We can talk about it if we look at it from a green perspective, which I think is very unique and very relevant right now. From a developed world perspective, there are still major opportunities in the developed worlds, and specifically around sustainability. There's a huge awareness of sustainability and being a conscious shopper and so on, but there seems to be quite a big discount in terms of what action is being taken around that. I think even though the green products and the green shopper, that value has remained reasonably constant even through the recession. People still have tended in the developed markets to go for price, convenience. Those seem to trump sustainability and call it the green movement in the developed markets. In contrast to that, the developing markets, apart from the increasing middle class, also from sustainability, have a huge opportunity for us, to bring through a new educated shopper. That it's not about changing their habits and getting them to purchase sustainable products. It's about educating these shoppers that they will be sustainable, conscious shoppers from the day they enter into that, call it middle class. And I think that's where the opportunity lies, but also a responsibility from the businesses themselves to drive consumers' behavior towards that. Because I think, generally we find that as consumers, we're conscious about it, but we sort of think, what impact can one person really have in terms of the global economy? And I think that's why it's the consumer businesses that need to drive that and need to shape those conversations that they have with their consumers to ensure that those sustainable practices are taken into the future.
So are consumers still stuck in a recessionary mindset?
Yeah, I think to an extent, definitely. I think, I think the economist Herbert Stein wrote once that, all things that do not go on forever must end. And I think, the spending habits that we saw pre-recession, I don't think we will ever see that again. I think the landscape has changed. People are looking for value and values. And I think we see people carrying that through, post-recession. People are definitely paying a lot of attention to paying down their debts. again, which results in less discretionary spending and more focus on discounts and discount retailers.
And we have Walmart entering South Africa. What sort of an impact will that have on the South African consumer?
Well, I think it's once you look at it on the broader retail landscape, I think there will be an impact, but it's not going to happen overnight. Walmart are also a great company that have been in many countries, and they also understand that ultimately they need to remain relevant to their consumers in the different markets that they operate in. I mean, the South African market or the African market is definitely different to what they're doing in the US. So I think they'll spend some time understanding the market, listening to the consumers there. There'll be a few things that they probably initiate in the short term in terms of introducing some of their private label products and so on.
And finally, what about 2012? Where are we heading in terms of the South African consumer?
Well, again, I'll bring it back to sustainability. I mean, and again, it's amazing how much activity we see in our advisory businesses around people inquiring around our sustainability services. And that's why I think, businesses need to use sustainability as a lens to drive innovation going forward. I think it's imperative for our economy and the global economy going into the future.